Battlefield is back, but take note of that asterisk. This beta definitely exposes some of the cracks within the armor of fun, numerous gameplay ruining bugs, questionable map size, and class balancing that absolutely needs to be addressed before launch. There's some work to be done. We can all agree that Battlefield 6 is a fun game.
You're goddamn right.
They even brought back this wild concept that wasn't in the last game, a scoreboard. As someone who put nearly 800 hours into Battlefield 3 and 4, this game captures exactly what I want from the Battlefield franchise. A return to the modern military feel with a grounded, believable aesthetic and clearly defined classes.
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
I wouldn't have put 40 hours into this beta if it wasn't fun. And while all the vibes and hype feel great about Battlefield 6, don't forget that it's still owned by EA. And they have lofty goals for Battlefield 6, reportedly supposed to hit 100 million player goal with the cost of $400 million in development. EA is definitely going to be looking for a return on their investment. But seeing what Black Ops 7 has to offer compared to Battlefield 6,
You serious?
this might just be the year where Battlefield takes over Call of Duty. That's if DICE and Battlefield Studios are able to hit the landing perfectly for launch, but it looks like they're going to be making some questionable decisions based on beta feedback that we need to talk about. So if you want to know everything, make sure you stay tuned throughout the whole video to understand all the details. So a big reason why I feel Battlefield 6 has gained so much praise and people are super excited about it is because of the alternative, being Call of Duty, and seeing where Call of Duty is failing when it comes to pleasing its player base. They're looking over the Battlefield like, hey, that doesn't look too shabby. And it looks like the numbers are agreeing with that feeling, because Battlefield 6 Open Beta topped Call of Duty's all-time player count on Steam. Though I would say an important key aspect to keep in mind when it comes to the context of these numbers is that we're looking at the peak player count rating right here when Warzone 2 launched. Now, Warzone 2 was far less popular than Warzone 1, and a lot of people still utilize Battle.net a lot. It's a very popular launcher out there. But don't get me wrong, it's a magnificent feat to see Battlefield have more peak player counts of all time compared to Call of Duty. Though you can see the comparisons here with the Twitch numbers. Now, obviously, Twitch numbers are not an exact correlation to player counts, obviously, but they do show you a sign of interest and popularity with the game. Where Battlefield 6 peak viewer count was 844,000, nothing to be shy about. That's an amazing number. But Warzone 1, 1.6 million. But the fact you can see Battlefield doing better than Modern Warfare 2, Cold War, Black Ops 6, and Modern Warfare 3 by a long shot gives you the feeling the former president of Blizzard, Mike Ybarra, said that Battlefield will boot stomp COD this year. But the real win here is COD won't be lazy anymore and will get a better FPS game out of it.
Boom. Roasted.
So with this context really kind of leads us into the decision making that DICE and Battlefield Studios did when it comes to Battlefield 6. So let's dive right into it, and that is where Battlefield 6 really does feel like an evolution of Battlefield 3 and 4 and kind of skips the parts in between. The first thing I want to address is the movement, which was recently talked about in their updates that are making based on beta feedback, but personally, I felt the movement was, dare I say, perfect. It was snappy and responsive while not cracked out like Call of Duty. The slide was advantageous while not camera breaking like Call of Duty, but they did state that they are going to make some adjustments when it comes to the movement, basically kind of toning things down a bit, which I'm all for as a mouse keyboard player. That's something I really appreciated about this beta. The movement wasn't insane, and it was actually possible to track players without having to rely on aim assist. But it definitely felt like Battlefield 6 was a little bit slower than like Battlefield 3 or 4, but not drastically. How this Reddit user also showcased the sprint speed between Battlefield 6 and also Battlefield 4. And from my experience, Battlefield 6 is a little bit slower, as you can say in this comparison. And I bring up tracking as a mouse keyboard player because we've seen the emphasis on aim assist when it comes to controllers and how it's almost kind of taking over their aim, especially in games like Call of Duty. Because when players are moving like this, which I showcased in a previous video, it's very difficult to track these kind of guys because they're moving so fast, breaking cameras, and it's honestly like kind of overpowered. But surprisingly, Battlefield's aim assist is not that strong. As you can showcase right here, that when they're aiming on this character, if you saw this in Call of Duty, they basically would just be doing all the aim for you in this game, where like you see right here, like you barely have to even do anything, just pull the trigger and you're gonna land your shots. This is where the community manager of Battlefield said this eloquently, that you are the skill. So with the minimal aim assist on controller and mouse and keyboard having, well, a superior aim, how are they going to balance this out? Well, it's a very interesting way they're going to do this. And Jack Frags put this on display in his video very well, where you're showcasing on controller, you can see how the recoil pattern looks, but then when you switch over to mouse and keyboard, it's a little bit of a different story. Because you can see when he fires his gun, mouse and keyboard have significantly more recoil than controller, which initially for first reaction is like, oh my god, controller is going to be overpowered. How am I going to be close to compete in this game? But the important thing to keep in mind is with the controller, you have up this much space to make your adjustments, where on a mouse and keyboard, you have a whole table. And from my experience as a mouse and keyboard main in Battlefield, it actually feels pretty good. I never really felt like, oh, that guy beat me because he has controller, compared to where I'm playing on Call of Duty. It feels like I'm playing at a disadvantage. That's where the less cracked out movement really comes into play, where it just feels like you're just outsmarting players and outpositioning them rather than being outplayed by aim assist and gameplay mechanics. Another great evolution is the revive mechanic, because now you can drag revive people, which at first I thought was gonna be more of a gimmick. Why would you run out into the open to drag people in? It's gonna cause the same problems if you just had a paddle and pick them right back up, going for those Rambo revives as we all know and love in Battlefield. But I found the Dragon Revive feature to be amazing. Throw down some smoke, grab that guy, drag him around cover, and you get the revives right back. It's a great evolution of what the revive mechanic has to offer. Plus it just feels like super cinematic and you're just like, come here soldier, you're not done yet. I'm just surprised something like the drag revive has not been implemented like really in any other game out there, especially in Battlefield. And of course it wouldn't be a Battlefield game without destruction, and destruction is absolutely back in Battlefield 6. Just look at the C flag location on Iberian Offensive. You can blow out the walls, you can even blow out the floors. It's insane the amount of level destruction you can bring in Battlefield 6. Though I will say it's not crazy, like you're not bringing down entire skyscrapers like you were in Battlefield 4, or flattening entire villages like you were in Bad Company 2, but it's back, very effective and also very useful when it comes to getting those campers out of those windows. Destruction in Battlefield 6 feels very strategic and useful, but surprisingly not that lethal. What I mean by that, if you remember the map in Battlefield 3, Grand Bazaar, down that center hallway, if you had an RPG, you could shoot the upper roof areas, collapsing debris on those campers, head glitching around corners, getting those easy kills. It's a super fun and unique way to get kills, to utilize the environment to your advantage. But in Battlefield 6, there really isn't any damage taken by falling buildings. Though the DICE dev did clarify from David Surland over here, saying that it does do damage, but just not instantly, saying they wanted to add a preference for fun over randomness when it comes to how you get kills like this way. But that's the thing about Battlefield, like if you're in a collapsing building, it should do a lethal amount of damage. Another element of destruction which we have no chance to actually play within the beta that's going to be at the full release is the sledgehammer, and I'm curious how effective it will be with destruction, because I play it with the finals and the heavy class in that game is amazing. Walls are only just a minor inconvenience with the heavy class in the finals. Now I'm wondering if we can still capture that same feeling but in Battlefield. And the way destruction works in Battlefield 6 is very specific, but also very useful compared to the finals where it's kind of just wherever. But at least destruction is back in Battlefield. It's effective, it's useful, it's fun, and it looks awesome. So like I stated at the top of this video, there were a lot of gameplay breaking bugs within this beta that I think a lot of people looked over because the gameplay experience of Battlefield 6 was so much fun and really felt like true Battlefield. But there are a lot of issues with this game right now that I think a lot of people are just kind of glazing over that we really need to talk about and absolutely need to get fixed before the launch of this game. Like within the first couple minutes of me playing Battlefield 6, I came across this bug with the Assault class and the grenade launcher, where if you ADS with the grenade launcher, then ADS with a hollow sight, you get this really weird swirling effect, like it magnifies all the visuals by like a million and you literally can't see through the sight at all. This was a repeatable bug I saw throughout the entirety of the beta that just like makes this absolutely useless when trying to ADS in the game. Another major issue that was happening with the beta was the search times, because the custom search has issues of going like 4 to 5 minutes of trying to find a match. I definitely experienced this. And if you're not going to give me a server browser, but at least you have custom search, but if it doesn't work, then people aren't going to use it. Or this guy here who just like hit like a rock, took some damage, and then randomly went into third person while playing the game. Or this moment I had when I was revived, somehow ended up in the tank, and then person was running around with no weapon. And the funny thing is I actually couldn't ADS, even got a sweet double kill there in the triple kill actually in the process, but I actually wasn't able to ADS and had no gun in my hand. It was a very weird thing. Or this moment when I was trying to be a good engineer, got pushed behind a vehicle, then squished underneath the tank and just completely fell through the map. It was a very long fall, to say the least. But those are bugs, those can get fixed. But a major issue I felt like was the infrastructure of the servers when it came to Battlefield 6, because a lot of people stated, like me, where the first weekend felt great, but the second weekend, the servers were not where they needed to be. Many people were like this, reporting laying in shots of people and just not getting the kill for whatever reason. I definitely experienced this as well. People were reporting super bullets when it came to the game because a lot of people say that like the time to kill felt right, but the time to death, not so much. And basically you would have a super bullet bug where you're just killed instantly. And that's just because the servers were just not keeping up with what's happening with the game. But an absolutely game-breaking issue was the spread issue that was going on. Apparently, if you were caught mid-slide and got interrupted that slide, it would still read your aim as if you were sliding. So if you tried shooting, your aim would just go all over the place. Now, this is obviously a bug that can be fixed, but I'm saying there was a lot of issues that were really gameplay affecting that would honestly stop you from playing the game because one, the servers were either not fast enough to keep up with the pace of the game or taking forever to find matches or people getting on top of the roofs of Cairo. Like those were a lot of issues that were needed to be addressed before the launch of the game. We do know that DICE and Battlefield Studios did state they're looking to fix at least the rooftop issues, but a lot of the other major issues they haven't really talked much about. So I'm warning you guys, don't expect the release of Battlefield 6 to be squeaky clean, especially with the release of Battlefield games. Pretty much all of them have rather serious bugs that need to be fixed and addressed. We do have Battlefield Labs where they've been able to test out a lot of these issues, but they're gonna be there. Like that's the long history of Battlefield games where year one, it takes a long time to get the game up in shape to where it could be a fun game to play. Don't act like I forgot about Battlefield 4's launch. Next, we have to talk about the UI, the interface that gets you into the game to actually play. And I'd have to say that this UI, there are three major issues that definitely need to be addressed, especially the menu UI. We're utilizing like this Call of Duty scroll tile UI thing where you can only see like 3 or 4 options at a time. Like this is a guaranteed way for having extra modes in the game to just die off instantly because you literally just can't see them on the screen. One thing I noticed that DICE did throughout the entirety of this beta, and other people noticed this as well, because this is a UI issue, is a lot of times with the closed weapons, they were often off screen or just at the very edge, right? Or starting to be faded out, where all your open playlists were always ahead of closed playlist options. As Moy Dog stated, saying based on player data, open weapons were most played. That's what they're expecting to hear. And I would expect to see that as well because open playlists were always put ahead of closed playlist options. And the way the UI looks, that's always going to be the case because you have this weird side scroll thing that only shows 4 options at a time. Also, the settings UI is kind of a mess within this game. You see the same settings in multiple different tabs. It's really difficult to find exactly what you're looking for. There are some settings that if you mess around with the sliders or numbers, you would expect to have a result in the game, but when you go into the game, it doesn't change that feeling at all. A big issue I was having was the in-vehicle aim sensitivity. It felt insanely slow, but I was in third-person angle. It was super fast and all over the place. And I was like, okay, I read the description, it says in-vehicle sensitivity. I'm like, that's what I'm looking to change. I'll switch that over. I'll feel a little bit of a difference, but then go in the third person and I can't even aim at all. A lot of people have stated this, myself included. I think if you had a search bar added into all the options you have for this game, for the settings, it would help out a lot when it comes to trying to find exactly what you need. Games like Call of Duty do this actually rather well. But the biggest issue with the UI is the lack of one element of the UI that I feel like should be there, and it was in previous Battlefield games, and it was such a crucial part of the experience, is a server browser. Now, custom search, I feel like it's trying to find that middle ground where you can choose the mode and the map that you want to play, which is a great addition to have in the game. It was so nice where I jumped into weekend 2 and I wanted to play Empire State or the New York style map. I clicked on that map, clicked on Conquest. Yeah, the wait time was a little bit longer, but I got exactly what I wanted. But a lot of this could have been alleviated if you just have a server browser, which is so much more than just being able to give players customization to choose what they want. It gives players the opportunity to create communities. I remember the days of Battlefield 3 and 4. The one server I constantly played was titled Pure Battlefield. It was a community that even had their own Reddit page. It was just a bunch of people who just wanted to play Battlefield as it was intended. People playing the objective, playing for fun, but also competitive. It was a sweet spot that it will stick in my memories forever, playing within this community. And you had to play on their servers because they're the ones that were able to moderate the player base. If people were just sniping and not playing the objective, they would try to boot them out of the game. If you had other people cheesing different aspects of Battlefield 3 and 4, they would kick them out of the lobby because that's not a fun thing to play against. You would have things like 24/7 map rotations, custom rule sets, and it just adds to the longevity of the game. But right now, I could still play Battlefield 3 and 4 easily because there's a server browser. I don't have to wait for extended long matchmaking times that have their engagement-based optimized matchmaking system find me a lobby that I want to play in. I want to choose what I want to play. Now, there will be a server browser available for Portal. I think that's absolutely needed for that type of mode. But for the multiplayer, they're forcing you into their algorithms to get you the most optimized match possible so you can stick and play around longer. And yeah, there was this explanation here by one of the devs stating that basically if they had official servers constantly running, it would be expensive. I totally get that. But when your company is worth basically $3 billion, I think you guys can shell the cash a little bit. Now we absolutely need to talk about this. This is one of the most hotly debated aspects about the beta for Battlefield 6, and that was the map design, and specifically the map size. Well, personally, I felt the map sizes were a pretty good variety of small, medium, and large scale maps, and the close quarters of the maps feeling much more close quarters than previous Battlefield games. But the large scale didn't feel as large as we've experienced previously within the franchise. And then a lot of times I felt like the pacing of these maps were way faster than you've ever played in a Battlefield game before. You rarely had those moments to breathe and kind of think about what you wanted to do. You always had to react so often. And David Sirlin, the lead producer on Battlefield 6, had this to say about that. Speed is a factor of map size. We picked these maps to make sure we hit the full octane version of Battlefield on the head and made everyone see we can handle that too when it comes to larger map sizes. Large maps exist and the tempo scales accordingly. You'll see soon enough, which I actually would agree that a lot of times the pacing did feel very well done, but it did also feel like it was a little much on the fast side of things. For Battlefield's known for like having those intense moments and downtime moments. But when people think of large scale maps, they think of the maps like Paracel Storm, Gold Mud Railway, but they also had kind of a bit of dead zones where flags were so far away that the only way you really could get to them or have them be useful were by using vehicles. And yeah, vehicles are honestly part of the gameplay loop when it comes to large scale modes in Battlefield, but when the flags are so far out away from the action of the map, you go, okay, I could be a team player and go capture that flag, but I'll be so out of the way, it'd just be kind of a boring experience to go capture it. I'm just gonna go jump in the middle. And if Battlefield 2042 taught us anything, that bigger isn't always better. And we can see here from just the launch maps of Battlefield 6 that there's going to be a decent variety of gameplay experiences to have. It's like Liberation Peak is kind of that middle size, Empire State infantry only, New Sobek is supposed to be kind of a mid-size kind of map, Manhattan Bridge, again, very infantry focused. Iberian Offensive, it was very infantry focused, but there were vehicles and tanks involved. Mirak Valley, which we'll showcase later, is going to be the largest map in the game. Siege of Cairo, very infantry focused with the accent of vehicles, Saints Quarters, and also we have the remake of Operation Firestorm, which is going to give you the full suite of experiences. But say if you're someone who loves jet gameplay in Battlefield, you're getting Liberation Peak, Mirak Valley, and Operation Firestorm, and that's about it. Where if you're an infantry player, every map is going to be awesome for you. I would say maps like Liberation Peak played out really well for large scale modes. It did feel a little bit on the small side, but it definitely provided enough an experience you really felt like you're playing a Battlefield game, despite all the snipers. And we did see people bring up comparisons of map sizes from previous games. This map right here being Liberation Peak. Compare that to, well, all the other maps from like Battlefield 4 specifically. You can see how much smaller these Battlefield 6 maps are compared to Battlefield 4, like Caspian Border, one of the most iconic maps in Battlefield history, compared to Liberation Peak. Makes Liberation Peak look like a small close quarters map. But don't worry, there is still hope for your large scale fans. We had this image kind of leaked out here showcasing Mirak Valley outlined in white in the comparison right here to Siege of Cairo. you can see where the differences are in size. And keep in mind, this is going to be the launch of the game. I'd much rather complain about these little details of like, oh, I don't have enough of Battlefield, rather than saying this is completely busted like we did with 2042. But surprisingly, some of these maps, given their size, still had major issues with their spawns. I definitely experienced this as well, where I would spawn on the flag in the line of sight of enemy players. Again, this is kind of lines up with the bugs that we talked about earlier in the video that they definitely do need to be addressed before the launch of the game. And many people, myself included, had issues with the way the lighting worked in the game. Especially when you're going from a dark area to a light area or vice versa, you would have these massive washout moments where you really can't see around you at all. And I understand it kind of give you that realistic visual representation of what your eyes would do while you're playing. I totally get that. But the thing is that this is also a video game, and I understand trying to grab that realism aspect of it, but you also gotta think about the functionality of the whole thing, and the lighting, when going from light to dark or dark to light in different rooms or areas of the map, functionally just didn't really work out very well. Since the beta, there have also been this discussion about a filter put over everything in the game to give you this visual representation of what they want to accomplish. Very low saturated, high brights, high highlights, honestly mimicking a lot of Battlefield 3, and that was one of the aspects of that game that got heavily criticized about this blue tint filter and this drab kind of coloring of the world. This video by Vic's Corner really does a great job of showcasing how these different types of gradients really capture different vibes and aesthetics to they want to accomplish, like showcasing here on Iberian Peak, how it has kind of like this green, blue washout filter, but then with some color correction, really kind of gives you the sense of what colors really could look like in Battlefield. And this is one of the things I think it's going to be rather interesting to see how the community really responds to this. As personally, I kind of like the visual. I like the drabness of it as well, but I also would like to see variety of what we can expect when it comes to the visuals and coloring and the shadows of what Battlefield 6 has to offer. As you can see, the post here on Reddit really showcases the before and after, with the no filter being a filter applied to the game to really have those vibrant colors really pop out. You can really see how the fire in the background really comes to life with the no filter option. Battlefield's community manager Total FPS did actually respond to this, saying there isn't a filter that's applied to it. It's more just actual atmospheric vibe for each location. And gone are the days of putting blue on everything, but he will chat with the level design team to kind of see if there's anywhere they can improve. And while we're on the topic of maps, we have to talk about Rush, man, because it's one of my favorite modes from Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3, and it just does not work right now with Battlefield 6. Like, the only map I felt that was a decent Rush / breakthrough map as well was Liberation Peak, because you had vehicles prominently throughout the level. But this is nowhere in comparison to what we had for Battlefield 3. Like, remember Dammit Van Peak? That map was peak. Every Rush match was so heavily focused on infantry play that it just felt very one note. And the whole purpose of Battlefield is adding in these vehicles to really spice things up a little bit, right? It's that delicate balance between power weapons, or basically like tanks and jets and all these other type of vehicles, with infantry to be able to counter that. But in Rush, like, the engineer class is basically useless because vehicles are just nowhere to be seen for the most part. And vehicles are crucial for game modes like Rush and Breakout, because they're meant to kind of break up the front lines, mix things up a little bit. You saw this in Liberation Peak, and vehicles were needed, very useful, but if you had an unskilled tank user, they get blown up instantly. And also, a little bit of a downside for me is that there was no 64-player Rush. I understand going with 24 players, it's a little more balanced and just makes a little bit more sense, but it's still kind of a bummer. And it doesn't look like DICE or Battlefield Studios will be able to give you a 64-player Rush, but they're like, hey, if someone does it in Portal, you can do it. But with the enhanced destruction, you would think they would take advantage of what Rush can offer. I experienced this a lot when playing the finals, actually, because there was this cash out mode where you had to go to a specific objective where you get to cash out your points to add to your team's total score. But the really cool thing about it is that those cash out locations were dynamic. If you blow out the floor right below it, the station falls right with it as well. I remember I did this in a previous game of the finals where it was like the last second of the game, and I noticed that I was watching my teammates trying to defend the score zone. They both died. I blew up the floor right below the station. I go over, interact with it, and end up getting the win. And that was such a cool dynamic experience that you can really only have in the finals. And this is a massive opportunity that I see Battlefield 6 being able to do, but they just don't have it. This type of dynamic experience can make Rush really stand out from Breakthrough, because right now, Breakthrough and Rush are feeling kind of like the same experience, And if I'm gonna play anything, probably would end up playing Breakthrough because it just plays out better than Rush. This next section, we had to talk about the weapons and the classes. Because what's a first-person shooter without its awesome weapons? And what's a Battlefield game without its classes? And while they're back and they're fun, there's definitely a lot to be desired and changes that need to be made before the launch of the game. Let's first start with the weapons. I would say the gunplay in this game felt awesome. A lot of people were very concerned about guns being very like laser beamy in a way. We saw this a lot with like Twitch streamers showcasing, kind of scare tactics like, oh my god, there's no recoil with this gun. But from my experience of playing, those laser beam guns generally had slower fire rates and lower damage, which is generally how Battlefield has always balanced out their weapons, which we have to bust out MS Paint to kind of showcase this design, where we have high fire rate, low fire rate at the bottom here, and on the left, high damage, on the right, low damage. And basically, Battlefield weapons kind of follow this trajectory right here, where you can have a weapon with high damage but low fire rate. Right over here, we say like a Scar L or something like that. Or you can have a weapon with high fire rate but low damage right here, which was some of the SMGs that we experienced. Previously, this is where we had the M16 in Battlefield 3, sat right in the middle. And we'll get into why that's such an important thing to keep in consideration when it comes to the weapon in Battlefield 6. But based on the initial feedback that we received from DICE and Battlefield Studios about the weapon balancing, the only thing that's really getting a nerf or change is the pump shotgun, which makes me a little sad because this shotgun was a lot of fun. I mean, just look at this clip. He shoots him out of the window. That's how much power this shotgun has. And I would admit that yes, the shotgun was a little too good in the game. DICE also was aware of this as well. That's why we saw this recent nerf of having to require more pellets to get the kill. But how many more pellets? How will it affect the range and effectiveness? We don't really know. I just really liked having an effective shotgun in Battlefield for once. This was an amazing gun to use, especially in close quarters, and it's supposed to dominate. It's a shotgun. But really outside of that, there wasn't really any kind of glaring weapons that were clearly the best option. But I'm concerned that that will be the case when we get the full release of the game because of the open and closed weapon system. One of the aspects about Battlefield that's been throughout the entirety of the franchise are weapons tied to different classes that really give you that sense and feel of playing that role within the battlefield. But the crucial part about it is that it added weapon variety to what you're playing against. And this is what really concerns me about the open weapon system in Battlefield 6, but having all the weapons available to all classes whenever, which seems freeing and nice. If you want to play recon but want to level up your ARs, you can do that. But I think what this might lead to is a meta showcasing in Battlefield 6. We've had this happen previously, especially in Battlefield 3. Like I mentioned earlier, with the M16 was clearly the best weapon to use in the game. Not that it was necessarily overpowered, but it just fit the game the best with the different sightlines, the rate of fire, and damage. It just ended up being the best weapon to use. And if you had an open weapon system in Battlefield 3, everybody would be using the M16. Now, to try to stop people from doing that, they did put a bit of a guardrail of adding in perk benefits for using specific weapons for specific classes, but I found that those perks were not really that useful in the game. Like, yeah, if you're using assault rifle as the assault class, you get like faster weapon swaps. SMG with the engineer class, you get better hip fire. And for support using an LMG, you don't get a sprint penalty. But say you're a support class using literally any other weapon, well then your movement speed is still the same. And honestly, you're using a weapon that's a little bit more accurate and effective on the battlefield compared to an LMG. And while better hip fire with an SMG as an engineer is really nice, you have green laser sights, which effectively make the hip fire in the gun really effective. And yeah, extra hip fire accuracy with an SMG as an engineer is really nice, but if you put a green laser sight on other kinds of weapons, they are pretty accurate. I experienced this using assault rifles and I was hip firing almost the whole time, being very effective. So if you really wanted this open weapon system to happen, I really do feel like you need to have those extra perks be such a benefit that it would be nonsensical for you to go off and start using different weapons from different classes. Now, in a magical world, if DICE and Battlefield Studios are able to balance out all the weapons in the game perfectly and there's no clear, obvious weapon that needs to be played, then I actually would say yes. I actually did have fun with the open weapon system. There were plenty of times I was using an assault rifle as an engineer on like Cairo, and I was popping off in those lobbies. But I also felt like I should be using an SMG. And the fact that DICE and Battlefield Studios are launching the game with open and closed weapon playlist, I really do feel like you just need to pick a lane and stick with it. Dividing out the player base like this is going to keep like your classic fans from playing your modern version of the game. I do feel like eventually one is going to win over the other based on community feedback, and we won't truly know how it plays out until the entire community plays it at launch. But I just have major concerns that there's going to be an obvious weapon choice and an obvious loadout you're going to need to run with once the community figures it all out. I also want to point the almost genius way of what they're doing to balance out attachments is kind of like a pick 100 point system that they have, kind of taken from Call of Duty, but I think in a much more effective way. Where yeah, you can put a ton of different attachments on your gun to make it basically an effective laser beam, which you've seen previously in Call of Duty's Gunsmith. But the interesting thing is that they're balancing each attachment by having a point value to it. So say an attachment like a foregrip is way too effective when it comes to recoil management, rather than nerfing that attachment, you just make it more valuable in points. So if someone really wants to reduce that recoil, they're gonna have to forego other aspects of their weapon so they don't ruin the effectiveness of the attachment, but you also nerf it in the way where it still might not be the most meta build-out you can put together. And generally when a studio nerfs an attachment, especially Call of Duty, they basically nerf it into oblivion, so then it just moves on to whatever the next whack-a-mole attachment that's going to be the most overpowered thing people are going to use. Claps to DICE and Battlefield Studios putting together that 100-point system. I think that's an amazing way to balance out these attachments. Now, a new addition with the classes added into this game were like these perk unlocks you get throughout the match by getting more points. Say for a sniper, if you get a headshot, it's a fatal headshot. You can't revive the player, or an engineer gets a boost to their repair ability. I really enjoyed these perk bonuses you'd get throughout the game. It kind of felt like activating like a super ability from Destiny, but not as gameplay affecting. There were so many times I was playing as an engineer trying to keep a tank up that was getting heavily bombarded. I'd pop that repair boost and keep that tank up and running. These perks help encourage players to be more active and do more team play, which is an amazing addition. And while the fatal headshots can feel annoying, it does give snipers on the battlefield more effectiveness rather than just sitting back and just going for cool headshots. And while we're on the topic of classes, I do feel like the balancing of all 4 of the classes was good, but it definitely has some glaring flaws. For one, I kind of felt like the Assault class was rather useless. Though we didn't get the full experience in the beta of what Assault classes are going to be able to offer, but what they had was a grenade launcher, and you can have a shotgun in your back pocket. It wasn't really that effective unless you're like a super slayer, which I'm not really. I'm decent, but I can't like slay out entire lobbies. I wasn't really feeling like I was being a benefit to the team and being kind of selfish. Now we do know that at launch that Assault classes are going to get the respawn beacon or taken away from the recon classes, but also getting ladders, which is going to be very interesting to see how ladders are going to play out. And it's gonna be very interesting how you score that as well. Like if somebody climbs a ladder, do you get like 20 points? But really the idea of classes is that they provide unique benefits to the team that other classes can't. So if you're not playing that well, you can still help out your team. But right now the Assault class has like no benefits to the team whatsoever. And yeah, DICE did say that they're gonna change some things up to make it more useful to the team. It just, from what we played, it didn't feel good. Now the Engineer class, it felt awesome. It was the class I probably played the most as, especially once I put a suppressor with a green laser with my SMG. I was a close quarters demon. I will say that having the ability to have an RPG and stingers felt a bit overpowered. So if you're at Liberation Peak and flying a helicopter, or jet, I can imagine it being very difficult to fly. Now, I'm awful at flying in Battlefield 6. If anyone here is a pilot, let me know what that experience was, but I definitely didn't notice them being that effective on the battlefield. The support class in this game, I feel like is going to get the most love, at least at the state of what we experienced in the beta, where you can resupply ammo and provide health. You can quickly revive up to 3 teammates fully. Oh, and you can also provide more cover with a shield you can drop down. I feel like if you really wanted to be effective on the battlefield and a Slayer, support was kind of the class you utilize. But my biggest issue with support is that I felt like the defibs just need a little bit more of a connection when it comes to reviving players. Even though, yeah, there is an outline that indicates when a player is in a revivable state or range, it just needs a little more of like an audio cue to let you know that, like, yes, you connected, or a little bit more of an animation. DICE did state that they are going to extend the range of the defibs. I think how mirror more what was in Battlefield 3 and 4. So maybe you don't have to feel like you have to be right on top of somebody. And that range extension might help out with the recognition in-game of if you do actually execute that revive with having to rely on UI elements to tell you that you did it. But I will say that there definitely needs to be some kind of balance out right now, because I feel like engineer and support, especially support, is going to be like the go-to class to play from anybody. And the benefits of having no sprint penalty with an LMG isn't that much of a benefit would stop you from using an SMG or an assault rifle. And lastly, of course, the recon class. And really, it just kind of felt like a recon class, right? You're able to use C4, you're able to use sniper rifles, you have that spawn beacon as well. And overall, just kind of felt like what we've had previously. Though we're on the topic of snipers and the recon class, I would have liked to see more counterplay when playing against a sniper. Think about your experience on Liberation Peak. We have all those snipers shooting at you. When you're trying to fire back at them, there is a suppression mechanic, but I didn't really feel like it was that effective. So many times I was shooting at snipers and still getting fatal headshots. Personally, I would like to see if a sniper does get suppressed, you have much more idle sway. It would just be a great counterplay, so then you don't have to worry about completely changing the maps like on Liberation Peak when you have like 18 snipers trying to shoot at you. As long as you fire back at them, that idle sway will at least hopefully stop players from, landing those headshots luckily on you. And like I stated at the top of this video, Battlefield 6 is setting itself out to be amazing, but EA still has a chance to completely ruin all the goodwill that they've built up with this game. Where recently an industry analyst, Michael Patrick, claims that the Battlefield GM told him they plan to have a yearly Battlefield game release, but it will take 5 years to really see it come to fruition, but basically have the 3 different studios that they have with Battlefield, making it so then they can release Battlefield annually, just like Call of Duty.
No! God, please, no! No!
But don't take just my word for it. Months ago, this former developer stated just that, saying the goal is a new BF game every year. I think EA has a roadmap to achieve this, but I won't see it for the next game in 2026. A full price main game with a limited single player, seasons, battle pass, and live service slop, and a free to play Warzone like mode. And well, most of that is already coming true. And I just can't help but feel like they're gonna try to push the microtransactions into some kind of way, like Call of Duty. Even though one of the first microtransaction packages did just leak out, showcasing like a blackened out version, which still fits very much in the aesthetic. I'm totally fine with this. If people want to pay money to look like this, more power to you. But I'm just saying, there's a reason why Call of Duty is doing this for Black Ops 7. We're so close to the launch and full release of this game. I'm definitely gonna go in and give you guys my full opinion on every aspect of Battlefield 6 as a long-term Battlefield fan. I'm highly invested with this game, and for my time with the beta, it was a blast. I am in withdrawals. I want more Battlefield, which is something I haven't been able to say since the release of Battlefield 4. If you guys made it this far in the video, I hope I earned your like, maybe even a subscribe. And thank you all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it, especially for these longer in-depth videos. If you guys want to see some more like this, let me know in the comments. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.